Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I got a lot to say, and I want to get through this video quick, so let's rattle some things off. Number one, this will be a normal episode with the little cuts with the question on the screen, so we're back to normal on that front. Number two, content for the week is going to be mostly focused on the Arcadian. Normal mode comes out Tuesday. There will be job changes. I'll probably do some more job thought videos, but expect a very, very busy inbox Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, with things finally tapering off towards the end of the week. Number three, this video is going to have a sponsor. It's going to be a Magic Spoon ad that's going to play after I do my little Patreon sponsor thank you, and before I get into the first question. So thank you to them for sponsoring this. And finally, thank you for everyone on Patreon for supporting. So sponsors are optional through Patreon or through the super chats or whatever. But all my content's available for free, so I just throw that thank you out there for anyone who does do it. But just enjoy the free content, like, engage, ask questions in the comment section below so that they can be on the next episode of the weekly Q&A. All right, with that, let's play the Magic Spoon sponsor ad, and then let's get into the Q&A. Before the video kicks off, though, it does have a sponsor, Magic Spoon. They've been sponsoring the channel for a while now with their wholesome, high-quality, high-protein cereal, and they're back again. Between long raid hours in my games and big workouts at the gym, I'm always looking for more high-protein calorie sources that are really easy for me to just get and go, especially since too many carbs just kind of makes me sleepy. For something quick and easy, I grab my Magic Spoon cereal. I'll just graze with it, honestly. I'll pick it right out of the bag or pour it in a bowl first, but the spoon, I'm definitely more of a hands-on kind of person. Besides, it sates my snacking needs too. Or I'll honestly grab a treat bar, especially right when I come back from the gym, and it's got 4 awesome flavors for me to choose between, and I love all of them. If you'd like to try Magic Spoon while also supporting the channel, then click the link below to get some today. Build your own custom box of cereal with tons of available flavors, or throw some treat bars in there if you want something on the go. Best of all, use my link and discount code Mrhappy to get $5 off of your box. And if you don't like it, Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee. Let them know if you didn't like it, and they'll refund you, no questions asked. So click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code Mrhappy to get $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/Mrhappy and save $5 on your order. And it even works in Canada and the UK. Thanks again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring, and now back to the video. All right, our first question just says #Happy Mondays, which I like. Hi, Happy. Hi. Last week, someone mentioned the topic of adding an entirely new role, and this brought me to a slightly different thought. Why is it that we have range roles separated by caster and phys range to begin with? Is there a real reason historically? So I can tell you right now, with the way the game is done, there is a good reason, but I don't think they've ever clearly stated that there is or was a good reason for it, other than wanting to break down the classifications of the types of jobs, like just for grouping them up into more appropriate categories. The actual goals between what a phys range achieves and what a caster achieves are significantly different, to the point where it makes sense to have them as separate roles. If you were to, for example, get rid of phys range and just have a 4% bonus for rolls, so you just had, ranged melee tank healer, then the pool there makes the goal gap a little bit rougher. Like, I guess if you completely adjusted phys ranged roll to match caster, like they have similar tools available, the question of raise versus non-raise comes into question, and their damage is brought up accordingly, then it's not as bad. But to achieve what they want to achieve within that role now, if they did not have the 5 separate roles and the buff that comes with having all 5 separate roles, I'm not gonna lie, I think people would just not bring phys range. Like, maybe Bard could still have a spot, but if there was any discrepancy where casters were better, they are generally not right now. It's Black Mage and Picto, but and historically Summoner and Red Mage in previous expansions have been higher than the phys range, but recent history has made numbers a little bit weird, that kind of a lot of the phys range and casters kind of live around the same power scaling, which has allowed Black Mage and what will undoubtedly be Picto to reign supreme when it comes to endgame rating. But they would have to just adjust what the roles actually do, and they seem to have always had the idea of giving the phys range role a different identity within raids themselves. So there's a lot of reasons what could be, and I don't think they've ever explicitly stated that there's a reason. That's just what they decided to do, and they've continued to roll with it. That's really all that I have to give to that. And I don't think they'll ever shift away from that. I think they're far too deep in the way they've introduced jobs, the way that they've set the game up to ever break that barrier down. All right, it's off screen, but there is a #Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hi. Hope you're doing well. I just ate, so I'm like I'm like salivating and it's bugging me. So that's another reason I'm trying to go fast through this, because I'm hating myself right now. First one, I'd say seeing you work out and get in shape acts as a motivator for me to try and keep up and do the same. So thanks. Glad to hear it. Hope the Dawn Trail streams were a good time as well. They still are. I want to ask your opinion about something I thought on improving for Machinists. I'm not really big on these questions, just as a heads up. I have to do this heads up every now and again because I'm not a developer. So even if I think it, even if I put the idea forth, I put a lot of ideas forth for Machinists. I've never seen a single one amount to anything. And that's how it should be. The devs shouldn't ever be looking at like just me. They should be looking at discussions and then like, you know, trying to figure out what works best. So these types of questions, like I might give a like, yeah, that's a good idea. But at most it's either a validation or a denial. And it doesn't achieve actually making a change, I suppose. Adjust the animation so the firestorm you channel isn't freaking silent 2 seconds into the channel. I would just prefer flamethrower to be a turret, and then I don't have to think about anything at all. Make the power of flamethrower scale off your battery gauge. They could do that. Quite frankly, I don't like flamethrower enough as it is. Like, yeah, if you wanted to make dropping it as a turret, my first suggestion, also scale with battery gauge, sure. I would prefer not to. I'd prefer the queen just be the battery gauge and flamethrower be something that generates heat, or, you know, is a turret on its own that just deals like a cone of damage that you just place down. Because like imagine if you could place like a flamethrower down where like, let's say you have to keep ads separately tanked from the boss, but there's like a mechanic where, you know, for some reason you have to hit the boss. I don't know, like there's a lot of scenarios you come up with it. The ability to put a flamethrower turret down next to a bunch of enemies where they're going to be tanked, and then to do something else with your space, with your time, with your damage, with your skills. I don't know. There's scenarios they'd have to very specifically make for it. But like, regardless, I just prefer flamethrower to either be removed or to be made not such a clunky, high commit tool that doesn't feel good and doesn't really do a whole lot outside of a few very specific circumstances. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey there. Hi. Question about job feedback consistency. Where do you draw the line for when quality of life should become a standard rather than be kept different between jobs to prevent them from becoming samey? I think it depends on what said thing is. If it's an active detriment to everyone's ability to play the job, I no longer consider it part of the job's identity. Like hypercharge on Machinists, since we were just talking about that. Great example. If you have any amount of ping, or even if you get a bad instance in game, just like a laggy instance, hypercharge sucks. That's a design flaw. Like that's like a major problem. Whereas something like, I don't know, I guess it depends. Again, it kind of depends on the scenario. You could, that I think requires like a wholehearted rework of it. But hypercharge doesn't even need to be reworked to be like other things. Like I made the suggestion that hypercharge just be like, they make your GCD 1 second, there's no weaving, and you just pop off 5 quick shots with it. And then you just ignore the weaving part. Like maybe you make it so each of them still gives you some time towards the OGCDs, but then you worry about all your OGCD weaving during your other tools and your other abilities, and you leave it out. Like that would be an adjustment for an ability that's very similar to some other jobs, but now it's very much its own thing. So I think it just is a matter of how much is a skill a detriment to the job versus making it the same just to make it the same. Because I think that's what you should be aiming to do, is improve the job, not just because quality of life makes it easier to play, but because it genuinely feels better and unique while also fixing a problem. And I think they don't often enough do that. They look to the lowest common denominator fix because they've already done it elsewhere. That works sometimes, that doesn't work other times. And I don't think they've determined the difference between the two. Hashtag Monday with Haps. I haven't earned the Mister in this particular case. Hi, Haps. Hi. Hope all is well. You too. Just a couple of quick questions. One, do you have any plans on making a guide for the job? And this, I don't know which job, but I tend not to like making job guides anymore. When I make guides, while I will reference things other people are doing, I often like it to be based on my experience with the job. And while I have experience with various jobs, Viper, Fizz Range, whatever, at the end, somebody has done far more work than me to make sure that everything is perfect. You know, like there is an ideal potency per second best thing to do. And I'm not the one to usually figure it out. I usually get like at least somewhat within reason of something. Like if there's like a logical reason why I would think that something would end up that way. But there's always someone who does that little bit of extra work. And the question is, do I now just present you with their work? Or do I just present you with my work, even though it's technically incomplete? And don't get me wrong, on YouTube, this happens a lot. A lot of guides that are posted for Savage are not an original strategy that the individual came up with. A lot of the times, it's a better visualization or communication of something that is widely accepted. That's a perfectly reasonable thing. I have a mental block about doing that kind of stuff because I very much like to feel like it's an extension of my efforts and not somebody else's. So you see me mix it in on occasion, but because of that, doing a job guide would a lot of times be taking what I know, referencing it against the balance, and then communicating it. So the answer is always kind of maybe. It depends on my mood. It depends on how I feel like my contribution adds to the guide versus just kind of lifting something off of another page. But I can't make any promises on that front. And 2, any tips for maintaining or softening short beard or mustache? No, because I mean, have you seen mine? Mine looks terrible. It's gone right now, but like, go back and look at last week's episode. Terribly maintained, terribly handled. I just get rid of it every once in a while once it starts scratching against my face when I'm sleeping on my side. However, I have before had things like beard oils and stuff, and quite frankly, yeah. Usually a beard oil, some form of conditioner, moisturizer that's specifically made for beards and short hairs. That goes a long, long way. I wish I did it more consistently because I used to at one point when I got gifted that stuff, and it was amazing. So I would look into stuff like that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hi. No, well, I said hi to you. I didn't even notice you didn't say hi. Damn. That's brutal. Seeing that they have buffed Addle, Feint, and Reprisal the last 15 seconds, you think this will be impactful and or essentially useful for certain mechanics. It's useful now. Like, even in the extreme trials, we're finding ways to apply that. Is it necessary in an extreme trial? Not really. How necessary do I think it'll be elsewhere? It'll be really good to, play to that 15-second mark. But, I think it'll be important for sure. Like, would you have a time where you apply all 3 at once? Yeah. There's plenty of time. There's plenty of situations where you apply a Feint, an Addle, and a Reprisal. Because you're not like saying, oh, we can only have one of these things. You're thinking, oh, where are the points in this fight where I really need mitigation? And is there just a point where it makes sense for all 3 of these to line up? Like, if I'm going to lose a Reprisal, I'm not going to not use it because there's a Feint and or an Addle. Same with Feint or Addle. Like, oh, if I Feint here, my next major Feint is X attack. The other melee, if there is one, can get the next Feint on the next major attack, and then I'll get the one after that. So, yeah, no, there's plenty of times where you would definitely stack all 3. It's just a matter of the fight-to-fight, timings. Hashtag Monday with Happy Mister. Hey, Haps. Hi. To go back to the Savage Ultimate raid topic a bit, how far do you think people will go to grab a further advantage as new tiers come out? The whole thing makes me think about the most recent raid race in Destiny 2. How teams completely stopped streaming video and just had audio and even sometimes muted that to keep an advantage. I won't be surprised if we see that. I think we've even seen that from the WoW race to world first. Even in like the modern era where it's a huge activity, they'll like work out how to do something. And even though they'll then stream themselves doing it and you can kind of extrapolate it, that wouldn't surprise me. And we've seen that, what you've just said, in the history of Final Fantasy XIV as well. So if a team really wants to win, they will throw away the spectating experience. The problem within 14 is that if you do that, and this is very important with the whole Echo Neverland thing coming out and the way that people have perceived raids and raid racing in recent patches, and all of Endwalker especially, if they do that, if Neverland does that, if any group realistically does anything other than maybe mute audio to have a discussion, if they like cut the video feed or like hide what's on screen, everyone will suspect anyone of third-party shenanigans. That's the bottom line. People already have, and every patch we've seen something go wrong where somebody we find out has it. Happened in one of my groups where we found out, and that was just like, okay. And then for the next week, it was just a bombardment of things coming my way and the way of a lot of other raid mates. And it's always from non-raiders that seem to care about the integrity of the race, which is hilarious. But I also don't like it either, and I don't want it as part of my experience. So like, I kind of get it, but it's just like, either way, I think that alone is going to stop a lot of that from happening. Like people saying like, oh no, we need to go offline and make sure we hide our shit. No, if you do, it's not going to look good. It's going to look really, really bad, and everyone's going to be suspect, suspicious, putting everyone under a magnifying glass. So maybe audio cut, but video cut, I don't think that's going to happen, in all honesty. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Happy. Hi, hope all is well. You too. Recently, I was reflecting on Offhand Glamour. You've been asked variations of that question many times from people wanting to glamour things like Ninja or Viper Swords. While I agree with you, they would never introduce new offhand items for combat jobs. What do you think of making an Offhand Glamour slot? I think the way they've done the current slot, so you have to realize, like, okay, going to Viper and Ninja, for example, they would have to program another new slot after doing face wear. That slot would need to be able to overwrite the data of half of the information of another slot, half of the information of a single item. That is not a good ordeal. Now, is there a way to do it? Probably. Would I know it with their gameplay system? I don't trust that for a second. And I don't think it's reasonable to think that that would happen. Because, again, the ninja daggers aren't two different items. They're one. So splitting the data and only overwriting some of it, I don't see that happening in any capacity. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Question for job choice for raiding in the PF. Given that you can't rely on the performance of your party members, does it make sense to prefer a selfish DPS like Samurai or Machinist? Yes. Machinist is the PF Fizz range. Samurai is a great PF DPS, as is Viper. Although Reaper... Honestly, Reaper is mostly selfish. The amount you get from your arcane circle is not significant enough to be like, I should be a selfish. And Reaper is tearing it up right now. But yes, the less you need to rely on raid buffs to have a meaningful contribution in the PF, the more valuable you are. I fully recommend Machinist in the Fizz range slot if you're going through with the Party Finder. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hashtag welcome to Dawn Terral. I like that. Dawn Terral. Hope you're well. I'll take that as a hello. That works. The cats are okay and an extra bunch of hellos. There you go. That's just, I had to wait a little bit longer. Have been enjoying Dawn Trail so far. I was wondering if if we could have a few things I noticed for Pictomancer. On Subtractive Palette, the RGB combo is grayed out in favor of using CYM spells. Wondering if RGB buttons could switch under Subtractive instead. They could. I mean, you're not the only one who's seen this. Honestly, the only reason I think it's not, it's because they said, man, this job already has barely any buttons. We should probably make it have a separate button. I genuinely think that's the only real reason it doesn't work like that. Also, nitpick, but magenta feels awkward being the last part of the combo, making it CYMK. I'm colorblind, so if you're going to complain to me about the color order, that's lost on me. You can't ask me to care about that. Like, I understand that I don't have to I don't have to be able to see the colors to know and CMYK versus CYMK. But I also can't be asked to care because I can't see them. Like, honest truth, I just can't. I like how I said the question would be on the screen. I literally didn't even scroll down past the 1 on that last question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Man. Hello, Senor Contendo. I have a game physics question that maybe you can help. Back in 1.0, player characters used to have different movement physics, like a slowdown when stopping, character tilt, and such. Not sure what the reason was for removing these when transitioning to 2.0. My guess was either PS3 limitation or something. No, it's because it sucks. For movement, for anything that's movement intensive, it's garbo is the reason why. When you want to move your character in a direction to do a mechanic, you want your character to start moving, not to consider if you're already running, if it's a startup animation. No, you want your character to move. They're never... Now, okay, so character tilt, as long as it doesn't affect the motion speed, that's fine. But the slowdown or the turnaround and the kind of delay that comes with that, no, never gonna happen. Would instantly get the feedback to be reverted if they ever did it. But tilt, sure, as long as it doesn't affect the speed. But I still don't think they're gonna do it. I don't think our characters are rigged that way, and I don't think they want to go out of the way to rig them and consider how gear looks when doing these new animations that are tilted. I just don't think they want to do it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. Back on the start of Endwalker, we got a sort of roadmap to the upcoming major patches and its content that was revealed that we were getting 2 ultimates. When should we expect that announcement in Dawn Trail? Lucky for you, we have an answer to this. They sent the next live letter after Dawn Trail releases. So probably in August, in all honesty, we'll get this exact thing. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Hope you enjoyed seeing the full story from the playthrough. I've seen you tout Gunbreaker's new mitigation with baked-in thrill of battle. Yeah, a couple of times. So what's the best use of temporary HP? Of course, I'll always use Nebula for the 40%, but is it just for the 20% heal? I normally throw away Thrill of Battle or Shake It Off every time, so I never notice any gain. Well, so in isolation, you use it alongside other mitigations to achieve a similar EHP that you would with other mitigations. So you would combine it with like a Rampart, for example, or maybe a personal mitigation that, or even like a healer mitigation, you know? It's another way of increasing your effective HP, which EHP for short, which when multiplied by mitigations goes way up. And you're just trying to achieve a minimum EHP to survive any given tank buster or hit. The big thing about this is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you ever want to just use Nebula for the Thrill of Battle effect, unless maybe there's a mechanic, like they could introduce a mechanic that makes that good, but generally speaking, you wouldn't do that. What it does is it creates a far higher amount of effective HP that one button allows you to achieve. So imagine if on Warrior there was something that required you to use Thrill of Battle and Vengeance. I know it's not Vengeance anymore with the upgraded one, but like just imagine, right? Although the new one is 40% and it just gives you a regen. So I guess technically the idea still works. It takes 2 of Warrior's personal mits to do basically the same thing as upgraded Nebula at this point. That's nuts. That's crazy. Like there are definitely situations where you use Thrill and Vengeance, like some sort of massive buster where you just stack stuff. The fact that this has 2 in 1, like I get it doesn't have the healing increase, but still that's just insane. Do you think with the gap closer changes, we'd ever get disengaged gap closers for a tank job? I mean, I couldn't say no if they thought it was thematically cool. I don't see why not, you know? Is it something they've shown any inclination for? No, but it would be arrogant of me to say they wouldn't do it. You know, they could, sure. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hi. Wishing you a good week and fast clears. I mean, it's normal mode, so, you know, we'll be all right. Just wanted to ask if you'd seen Zidane's and Mage Masters for Viper anywhere yet. No, but man, some of the Viper weapons are really cool. You got to realize a couple things. One, I don't like Final Fantasy IX very much. It's in my bottom 3 of Final Fantasy games, so I don't know what the Mage Masters look like off the top of my head. I know what they are, and I get them every run, and they're very useful, but I don't remember what they look like off the top of my head. Number 2, I wouldn't expect that many Zidane exclusive glams to show up in rapid sequence. If they are going to do that, they're probably going to spread them out so that it's a little more exciting when they finally do add one in. So keep that in mind. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello there. Hi. Did you know Huton is listed as fire damage, that wind fire supply isn't listed as physical wind and fire? Now you do. That's all cursed, and I hate that I know that, and I hope I forget it by the time I'm done recording. Now, for the actual questions, do you think it would be possible to make the role action more job appropriate like they did with Tactician? Well, it's not just Tactician. You know, it's all of the Fizz range to have their own. You have Samba Tactician. I mean, I guess you're just using that type of button as an example. And yeah, I mean, obviously, it's totally possible for them to do it. Whether or not they will, I think the main reason why role actions stay the same action across every role is so when you swap to another tank, you can instantly identify it as that action and know exactly what it does without needing to read it or relearn it. Whether or not that's necessarily the best route, I mean, that's up to them, that's up to the community, that's up to feedback, right? I'd be totally cool with getting 4 different versions of Rampart, similar to how we have 4 different versions of the 40% mint, you know, that all got their own unique upgrades. I'd be totally down with that, you know, no objection. But from a logistics standpoint, why they do it versus why they would not do it anymore, who's to say, right? Hashtag Mrhappy Monday. Hola, Happy. Hello. I was just curious about the fact that melee DPS is the only role that doesn't share gear across all jobs, instead just has each armor only work for 2 of them. I just find it weird. Has Square Enix ever given a reason for why it is that way? Genuinely speaking, it's because the armor sets, at least from their description, it makes more sense for certain armor sets to exist for certain jobs. So for example, maiming gear, I'm making a generality here, that's not always true, but maiming gear is generally more chainmail, like medium armor, and then monk and monk and samurai are more like kind of gaudy cloth, and ninja and viper are more stealth and leather. There's ideals some of the time. But as you well know, it doesn't really work that way. So the thought makes sense, but by now it doesn't. And you're far from the first person to question it, and it's perfectly reasonable to question it. And I wonder too why it's still that way. Probably because it's easier to leave it than it is to fix it. And they probably still have that same internal reason, but it is what it is. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, longtime listener, first time asker, lifelong Dark Knight. I apologize. And hi. While the new gap closer for Dark and Gunbreaker are fine, I'll miss Plunge and Trajectory. Should have been them blasting themselves forward and not a Kingdom Hearts glide. That's funny. You think gap closers could stand for having some extra effect, like being able to gap close to allies, add a small mitt for... You know, it's funny that you mentioned this. In the benchmark trailer, there's a point where Wuk-Lamat jumps in front of you and it looks like she's giving you some sort of defensive, and that's not the case at all. So people actually thought that might be the case. All she really did was move in front of you and then use Vengeance, or the new Vengeance equivalent, but it's still funny. Even having their range tech make their next gap closer of 100 potency. There's a lot of things they could do, and maybe they'll do them with 8.0. I'm not to say they could or couldn't do these things. You know, we know they're looking at more job unique things, and this could totally fall into that place. So write this down as something that you're kind of just like wish listing for the 8.0 job changes, which not for quite some time now, but I don't see any reason to argue against stuff like this, you know, or to, even if I'm like, oh, that's not necessary, whatever, like, it's irrelevant even what I think, and I actually like this kind of stuff, so I'm just saying that they could do whatever and be kind of cool. Hashtag Mr. Happy and Cat Mondays. They're chilling right now, which thank goodness, because he was not chilling right before I started recording. One, how does mitigation work? Pretty broad question. If, for example, a paladin uses Passage of Arms that states in which party members will only suffer 85% of the damage. With other mitigation tools, I know Scholar has similar effects to Sacred Soil. That's just a wording thing. It does still mean you take 15% less damage, and mitigations are multiplicative, not additive. So if you have a 20%, a 20%, and a 30% mitigation, it's not, you don't have 70% mitigation out of 100% of the damage. It's each one of them is applying to the next value. So you'll have 20% of 100 reduced, so you're down to 80, and then 20% of 80%, and then 30% of that, and what is that, 64%. So that's how it works, but it's still very effective. And I don't actually know the order of how the multiplicative, I think it's like the highest value mitigation is taken off the 100%, and then the other values are multiplicative based on that new percentage from highest amount. So if you had like a 30, a 20, a 20, it would do the 30 first and then the two 20s. And then let's say you had a 10, that would, I think that's how it works to like get the greatest value out of it. But I don't know for 100% certain, but the thing you've just asked about is just weird wording. And two, do you think that do the hitboxes and server ticks feel off at the first boss of Strayborough with the dolls? No, but I think a lot of people forget that when you're slightly away from something, it's much closer to you than it seems like it is. So it's really easy to get caught by stuff like that. At the very least, that's my impression, because I've had runs where I can, you know, dip and bob and weave, and I look like I'm the coolest guy ever. And then I have every other run. I'm like, no, let me go. So, you know, just lag. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hi. Looking forward to your Dawn Trail thoughts video. Oh, yeah, I got to work on that this week, too. My MSQ thoughts video. Well, I mean, you have kind of my thoughts video, State of the Realm, but, you know, I usually like to make my own video that's focused on just my thoughts, and it's shorter. I recently hit 3 lines and got my gold cert from Wonders Tales. Grats. I don't even try most of the time, dude. I just don't even bother. What should I really be doing with it? So you should go into the Party Finder and offer to sell it. The average going price on Gilgamesh is 20 million gil for a gold cert. So essentially you line up a buyer, they tell you the job they're going to want it on, or they tell you that they'll tell you what job they want it on once the servers come up for Savage. And then you usually want to be up really early, because the person who's going to be buying it from you will very likely be up at server time. You can just try to sell it for 20 million later in the day. Instead of lining up a buyer, you can just literally like go into the same deal, go into the PF and be like, want to sell gold cert, blah, blah, blah. Or like go into shout chat, want to sell gold cert. Or you generally just want to try to find someone in advance who you know is going to buy it off you. And again, 20 million gil from my experience is the going price. And then it's up to you whether you actually, I mean, you could use it for yourself also, but I personally think getting the 5 slot body and selling it is the only smart way to spend the gold, sir. That's my opinion. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. No hello. Depressing. But do you think the new expert dungeons are too hard for the community? No. I'm seeing huge outrage in Japan saying they don't want to do expert roulettes anymore, since if they get a bad party member, it takes too long to clear, and lots of my friends are also saying the same. No. Especially the first boss of Straightborough seems to be hated by melees. Just stop hitting the boss for a moment. I had a tank that left after a healer died twice, which was the first time I've seen that in 14 after 6,000 hours. You haven't PF'd enough or duty findered enough in 6,000 hours, because this is going to be far from the first time I've seen that. Personally, I love both of them, but I wonder if it's more to harm. It's not a harm. Like, just, like, play the game. And I've seen some people upset in Japan. I don't know if I'd call it a huge outrage, but it's more so people want to play the game like they played it in Endwalker, and you can't do that, and they need to change. Because otherwise, we're literally going to be stuck in Endwalker game forever. So, be better. Hashtag the day after Sunday with Mr. Happy. I like it. Howdy, howdy. Hi. How do you deal with people who don't take criticisms and suggestions well, especially in raid environment? So, I separate myself from that person. If I'm forced to play with them for any period of time, I will simply get to the end of that finish line as best I can, unless it gets really, really bad. And then I will separate myself from that situation entirely. I'll just leave, because there's no point in trying to be stubborn against somebody being stubborn. And what I mean by that is, if they are too stubborn to do things, or they are just not able to take criticism, and I guess it depends on what you mean by don't take it well. Does that mean they get emotional? Does that mean that they think that you're attacking them? Are they just resistant? Like, there's a lot of layers to it. But generally speaking, if people are, if at the level that I like to play with people, if I'm doing some like serious content, like casual content, I don't really care. I'll just finish the dungeon or whatever and move on. But in like serious content, if people are like an active detriment for that reason, if they're being stubborn and dickish, I will just like leave. I'll just separate, because I'll just be upset that this person is just acting this way. And if they are more timid and shy, I'll do my best to see it through, unless it really seems like it's not going to work, in which case I try to respectfully bow out. So that's it. But the bottom line is, I separate myself from situations I don't want to be in, because at the end of the day, I don't have time to micromanage people and their emotions and the way they handle things. If we're showing up to like an end game piece of content, then, and the expectation is that everyone is putting in the work and everyone's performing, then I just expect people to show up, understand their weaknesses, work through it, complete the goal. And that's it. You know, I'm not asking for the world. I'm asking for a few basic like functions. But again, this changes depending on the dynamic between you and the person, between how they react. So there's no catch-all for this, but I usually just try to separate myself from any environment that is not good. And this is included. All right, and it looks like that's all the questions I wanted to take. Somebody had asked me about the lower tome prices, but I know that person came to my stream and asked me the same question, and I already kind of gave them an answer, so I skipped through it. There was another one that I just kind of like scooted past. I don't remember which one it was, but like I was going to address it briefly. I feel like I had considered addressing it briefly. I'm trying to scroll back and just see if if I can remember. There was a minor like Dawn Trail spoiler question, so I kind of moved past that. Like, it was really minor, but at the same time, I was just like, I don't want people to have to worry too much. And then there was one other one. It was one about somebody saying they can't follow the dotted line for Viper. I'm assuming that's a visual handicap, meaning the person just like it's not clear. All they've said is I cannot see the dotted lines. So for me, that reads as visual handicap for Viper, which means my advice doesn't work. To which I have to. I mean, your other solution is to read and understand how your abilities work. Like, that is the other solution. What I said not to do is technically what you can do. It's just that it's a way, I think, a poorly explained path. And honestly, even though it's not like an up-to-date guide on the opener, my video I made about Viper from the live letter from like 2.5 months ago and my description of the job from Mediator are more than sufficient to get anyone through that job. You just need to then Google the opener and make sure you know that button for button, and the reopener as well, which is realistically just timing your double reawakenings while the debuffs are on the enemy. And who knows, maybe they make Noxious, or what is it called? Noxious Nash. Maybe they make it like 60 seconds after the, who knows? Who knows what they're actually going to do? That wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm willing to bet they do make it 30 seconds and 60 seconds when you double apply. Like I can see it coming. In all honesty, I think it's going to happen along with the Dreadwinder positional changes. And I think that was everything. Everything else was like a comment about something from last week, talking about healing, talking about potency linear scaling, or comments I made about Viper or the MSQ or a number of other things. But I think that's good for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. So thank you again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring. Thank you to all of you for watching. Remember, if you have a question, throw it in the comment section of the video below. Hashtag makes it easy to find, so that's usually preferred. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap. So thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for all of the raid videos this week. Probably some job thought videos as well. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.